Hey there, friends and viewers. This is Hengest, and we're going to be doing a very relaxed video today. As you can see, I'm on my couch. Just a little sit-down talk. And I mentioned this previously in a video log, as well as talking to a couple viewers via personal messages and such, Facebook, about this issue, which I feel the need to address. Now, let me just start off by saying that I don't like to stick my nose in other people's business. I don't like getting involved in pop culture, and believe me, that's what I believe this is. Because it more often than not just results in me getting angry and people having a negative opinion of me because I speak out against issues like this, and they don't agree with that. But I feel it needs to be done, and the primary reason for that is because I'll sit by and I'll watch, American culture decay with the modern, music industry and such. That's all fine with me. But I won't stand by and allow people to be taken advantage of. And with that statement, you're basically going to be able to tell what my position is concerning this whole Kony 2012 thing. And I just want to be very clear and concise about it. Because I do feel there needs to be messages like this. Given that the original video, I believe they just titled it Kony 2012, has been so explosive. In fact, the fastest growing YouTube video I believe ever. In fact, it needs to be counteracted by statements such as the following, so that people can at least have that last glimpse of realization of what exactly is going on here. So we're going to start off with my personalized definition of what's known as propaganda. Okay, now this may be a term that most of you are familiar with. Just to summarize, basically, I have notes here, by the way, in case you were wondering why I'm looking around, because I'm going to be doing this all in one take. But to summarize exactly what propaganda is, it's essentially a method of persuasion that caters specifically to one's emotions. Typically presented in a way that is very one-sided and not respectable. I say not respectable in a sense that if you know anything about basic psychology, thinking with your emotions is never really a good idea when it comes to making decisions. The reason for that is it invokes irrational responses, and it's more commonly than not associated with violence or a response to violence. And that just so happens to be the case today. So how is propaganda used for the most part? Well, it became very prevalent at the turn of the 20th century with World War I. It was used to great extent by the Russians, the Germans, even the Americans, basically the entirety of Europe when it came to choosing your side in a world war, international conflict. It has been used very, very effectively since then to spur on war and international conflict, as I said already. There are uses of propaganda that could be considered benevolent, but for the most part, it is almost always associated with manipulation through emotions, mind control, or just very unethical things. And is also used very commonly in marketing. One of the most common textbook, basically telltale signs of propaganda is the establishment of a figurehead, or more than one perhaps. Typically good and evil, yin and yang perhaps. But mostly basically villainizing or demonizing a single person. Because it's very easy to channel one's hatred, one's negative connotation or aggression towards a single person as opposed to a group of people or a nation. In this case, obviously, the very name of this movement, Kony 2012, is demonizing a single man, making you hate that man, making it very easy for you to be irrational and aggressive towards this person. And that, my friends, is a very textbook maneuver of efficient propaganda. The other is less common, but also basically creating a champion. In this case, we have this pretty boy who's been to Africa, and he has a cute little kid. And basically, he's the leader of this whole movement. He's the spokesperson, and everybody loves him because he's handsome, he's hip, and he's got a little kid, and he wants to help the world and all that. Basically, just take my word for it when I say it, friends and viewers, that this Kony 2012 video is textbook propaganda. No questions asked. Absolutely propaganda. And it's very easy to tell because there's little to no, in fact, There's little to no factual evidence, support, factual support. Very little. In fact, quite the contrary. There's a lot of misinformation and false facts in that video. Many of the American youth who are very susceptible to this sort of this tactic these days, given our current economic situation and the dissatisfaction with our current government, they're very susceptible to a tactic like this, and they actually, most of them believe that the LRA, the Lord's Resistance Army, was just founded in response to this whole Kony situation, and we have to counteract it somehow. I believe the LRA was founded in 1987. Okay, I don't even think Kony was one of the original founders. All right, it's been around for decades, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a new phenomenon. We've seen atrocities like the Rwandan genocide in the early 90s go on, where almost 1 million people were killed. Your parents were dealing with these same problems in underdeveloped nations in Africa. I believe the LRA is based primarily out of Uganda. Could be mistaken. You're going to notice I haven't really done a whole lot of research on this myself, except for what I've known in the past, simply because I don't have time for it. But I certainly have enough time to express the fact that this is well, we'll get into it a little bit, but Kony 2012 is definitely more than meets the eye. So we kind of touched on propaganda a little bit, how it's used, some telltale signs of propaganda. But firstly, it's important to realize that this Kony 2012 video was not made by a man. It was not made by a group of people. It was made by a corporation. Okay. Probably a publicly traded company that funds these sorts of projects. You can just take a look at what they're required to provide by law in the video description of the people that contributed to creating this video. It's done by professionals, guys. These people are very good at what they do, clearly, given the response. I mean, what has it been? Less than a week, it has almost 60 million views. Executed perfectly. If these people were using their skills for good, we could really be making a difference right now. But anyways, the LRA has been around since the late 80s, okay? Joseph Kony is simply a leader, figurehead in the LRA. It consists of many nations, okay? Joseph Kony is not the perpetrator of the LRA. He's simply a spokesperson or just a public figure. And the LRA has been doing many things, war crimes, human rights violations, scum of the earth things, and abduction of children is just one of the many, okay? It's very easy to manipulate people's thoughts by use of empathy and sympathy. In a way, it is encouraging to see that this video has had such a monumental effect on the younger generation, because it does tell us one thing, and that is that people are willing to help. But unfortunately, using children is one of the most common tactics in propaganda. And what do we have? In the early presentation of this video, we have the guy's child, the guy's voice in the video. He's a little kid, and he's asking him these questions like, "Oh, do you know who this man is?" And basically, playing the card of the innocent child being affected by the LRA. We also have the young African boy whose brother was supposedly abducted, and he's getting all teary-eyed on camera, and the guy's like, "Oh, don't worry, we're not going to allow this to happen. We're going to fix this. We're going to help you." Both of which are also textbook cases of propaganda. And it's no mistake, friends and viewers, that this was used in a very specific way to cater to your emotions. And that is, basically anyone who's studied sociology or this type of thing can basically pinpoint the source of where the actual empathy is drawn in the videos, or in the video, to win your support for this so-called movement. When the reality of the situation is, guys, that, what are they asking you to do? They're asking you to cry out to the U.S. government, to your political representatives, and demand that we go in there in the Congo, in the jungles of Uganda, and assassinate Joseph Kony. That's what it is, okay? That's what they're asking you to do. They want you to win the support of the United States government, so Obama and the military will send in some Green Berets and have Joseph Kony killed, assassinated. Just like Saddam Hussein, just like Osama bin Laden, just like any of these cult of personalities that are committing human rights violations and war crimes and such. Is that the right thing to do? Yeah. They're not going to change. You got to kill them. I mean, let's be blunt here. They need to be killed. They need to be, stopped. But does it actually solve the problem? The LRA, like I said, has been around for decades. What's the problem here? Why is this happening? Why all of a sudden are people so heartbroken about the situation? Well, we'll get into that in a minute. But basically, how do you solve this problem? We can draw some parallels here as to what's going on in Africa right now to Western civilizations in the middle or turn of the century, 20th century, that is. And that is basically, this is a process of social evolution. Underdeveloped civilizations tend to be entirely unaware of what basic human rights are and the foundation of the United Nations and all these things in an effort to try to enlighten them. But at the end of the day, you can't tell somebody what to believe. You can't persuade them that every human being is born with a basic set of rights, and that to violate those rights is not only inhumane, but it's inexcusable and should be met with forcible justice. They won't understand that if you go in there and you kill somebody like Joseph Kony. It's a natural process, guys. The United States went through it. And you young American kids out there that think your country's amazing and that you're so on top of the world, are you even aware of what the United States went through? When the English settlers arrived in the New World, we exterminated tens of thousands, if not more, of Native Americans who inhabited this land before we got here. That's essentially the same thing, if not worse, than what the LRA is doing right now. That was, 350 years ago now. Shortly after the country was founded, we battled decades of slavery, of basically persuading the United States government and the inhabitants of the U.S. that slavery is wrong, that you can't take someone's life away from them and use them to do things for you, which is basically undergoing every violation of human rights. Think about that. The racism, the tremendous amount of racism we went through in the middle of the 20th century. This is just 50 years ago, friends and viewers, that we became aware of that, look, this is wrong. We need to stop this. We need to make sure that the Constitution is upheld and that we're peaceful people. That we only recently has the United States, or any Western civilization for that matter, been aware of human rights and actually treated people fairly. It's a process of social evolution that takes hundreds of years. I mean, I'll just say it. The Western culture, Western civilization has advanced far, far faster than the rest of the world in the past few hundred years. That has caused them to be the first to really establish truly democratic processes and, uphold human rights in other parts of the world, like we've seen in World War II and various other incidences where the U.S. and other similar allies have intervened and really, stepped in and said, hey, this is not right. We need to stop this. But it hasn't always happened. But it is important to note that you cannot educate an area of the world. You cannot persuade them into becoming a more civilized country or a more civilized people by forcing them to believe things. It's a fundamental human understanding is that you can't force people to believe something ever. You can try your best through use of tactics very much like the Kony 2012 video in propaganda and similar methods of persuasion, but you can never really implant the understanding in somebody's brain. It takes time. Going in there and assassinating Joseph Kony is not going to solve anything. In fact, it might actually escalate the instability and escalate the amount of violence going on in Africa by taking out some kind of a cult of personality, some leader like that. The only way you're truly going to be able to fix this problem is by targeting it at the source through means of education. And now in today's information age, we have a method of doing so through a very advanced source of communication, aka the internet, which would have a monumental effect on Africans today, just to make them aware of where civilization is in other parts of the world. Education truly is the only solution. And unfortunately, not much progress has been made in developing Africa since the foundation of the Peace Corps in the late 60s. But again, we really aren't in a position to be teaching other people how to run their countries, are we? Although there are intolerable atrocities being committed in Uganda and on behalf of the LRA that need to be brought to an end but I need to open your guys' minds to what just happened with that video. It's very easy to win the support of countries, of celebrities, whatever, of the youth primarily, through use of propaganda, by exploiting empathy and basically the sympathy for the disadvantages that African children are born into today. But this Kony 2012 movement, created by these corporations, I don't even remember the name, but it's in the description of that video, is essentially a marketing scam. And you guys need to be aware of that. The potential to raise money through a movement like that is immense. Far more than a country could generate through tax revenue. Donations. Belief that you're actually donating to a charity that is going to stop violence and bring world peace, which could very well be possible, but unfortunately in this case, it's erroneous. It's not going to happen. You can do your own research on it. I'm not going to get into the semantics right now. But essentially, look at what they've done. They've catered to your emotions. They've asked for your support to save children, to stop killings, to stop abductions and all these things, which, by the way, have been partaking for over 3 decades now. This is not just developed in your lifetime, very, let alone the past couple of years. But anyways, they're using that to generate an incredible amount of funding, I'm sure, by purchasing basically a campaign merchandise, posters, clothing, whatever it is. Hey, visit our site, spread awareness about Kony 2012 because we're gonna stop this. We're gonna get this man killed. We're gonna contribute to world peace. It's a load of crap. It's nonsense. It's bogus. Whatever you want to call it. And they even give you a deadline, April 20th. If you don't buy this merchandise, if you don't vandalize your home city, if you don't spread awareness all across the world about Kony 2012 by buying our products, you're a bad person. Make sure that it's done by April 20th. Otherwise, you're a bad person. That is the message that was conveyed in that video. No question about it. There's no factual evidence. There's the use of small children. It's so unethical. It's a disaster. It's so successful. And it's basically social media terror. If you want to talk about terrorists, talk about an organization like the people that made Kony 12 exploiting the use of international violence to generate funds for their own cause. That is truly social terrorism right there. It's a crime. I wish it could be prosecuted for. But as long as you willingly give your money to people like that, nothing can be done on a legal front. It's a scam. Scams, for the most part, are entirely legal. And I'm being very forceful about basically denouncing this movement, but it's really disgusting to me that it's been so successful because it truly is unethical. If you want to make a difference, if you want to help to stop the LRA, yes, people like Kony do need to be killed. They do need to be stopped. Hell, he's just one of many problems in today's world. I mean, you take a look at the Iranian president. I'm not even going to get into that right now, but basically he's a modern day Hitler who's actually building his war machine publicly and developing nuclear weapons. Modern day Saracens, for Christ's sake. It's very scary. But it always falls upon the United States to fix these problems, doesn't it? The blade of the United Nations. We always take the fall for it. When in reality, we're just trying to help solve the world's problems. But unfortunately, the modern generation in politics right now, the generation in power, doesn't understand that this is a simple process of social evolution and that it takes centuries to overcome a problem like this. It's going to take enlightenment, but most importantly, education. So what can you do? You can help to educate these people. I mean, it's a tremendous undertaking. It's a monumental effort. It's going to take the collaborated effort of nations to really overcome this problem. And an incredible amount of funding the countries like the United States don't have because we bankrupt ourselves trying to solve problems like this over the past 10 years or so. And look at the effect that's had on the global economy. But I don't want to get into that right now. I basically just wanted to say that you're not going to stop the LRA. You're not going to stop these human rights violations and atrocities being committed by killing one man. You're going to stop it by educating these people and helping them to understand what modern civilization has become and the necessity for human rights. that abducting children, these arms dealings going on, senseless killing, it's all wrong. They're not aware of it, and you can't force them to believe it. They have to see it for themselves. And the only way for that to happen is through education and developing those nations. That video is not going to help with any of that, to be honest. It's just targeting a bunch of young people who are rearing for some kind of a conflict like this, so they can riot in the streets, they can march on Washington, they can plaster that crap that they spent all that money on all over the cities and feel like they're making a difference. You don't become a social activist by watching a viral YouTube video. Give me a break. What kind of logic is that? It's pathetic. It's truly pathetic that people believe they're making a difference just because they're buying some merchandise that somebody, some pretty boy told them to buy in a viral YouTube video. It's erroneous. It's disgusting. And it's my duty as a person, as a benevolent person, to help enlighten you that this is what's going on. That you're basically just funding a corporation right now. And that the only real difference will be made if you actually get off your ass and do something about it. I mean, if these guys who made the video were so truly passionate about putting an end to this, they'd have gone in there with some assault rifles in the Uganda juggles, and they just shot him. They'd have killed him. Wouldn't be considered murder. It's not all bad, though. That video, Kony 2012, has helped to spread awareness about international problems, which is a good thing. But it's been exploited. Those emotions, that positivity has been channeled into a marketing scam, which is basically social terrorism. And that's all I really have to say about it, friends and viewers. There's a whole hell of a lot more I could ramble on about. But I just wanted to express my opinion because it's going to make me feel better. It's going to change some of you guys. And, well, I'm sure I'll be receiving a fair amount of flack and animosity for it as well. But that's just fine. You know, losing the support of some viewers is definitely a worthy cause. It's saying what, really speaking the truth here. And I wholeheartedly believe what I'm saying. And I hope it makes a tiny bit difference. It is very difficult to enlighten people in today's world when you have a video like that, which has been executed perfectly by professionals, created by a team of really talented writers and editors, and yeah, lots of funding. And they're going to get a hell of a lot more of it. So the people behind Kony 12, they're not the devil. They're just taking advantage of you. And it's a big scam. And you're not going to save anybody by buying a poster and plastering it on the wall. So that's all I got, friends and viewers. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.